Okay, a beautiful morning outside today. Early part of the week's going to be beautiful until it gets really hot. Okay, She'ela, mi shematza aveda ba'ofan, sheyesh alav chiyuv lahachriz aleha. So you find a lost item. You know that the halacha says that you're supposed to return it and you have to post a sign, but ela shelo asakain. But you decided for whatever reason, it wasn't worth the bother. V'hikdish et otam etzia litzdaka, and instead you just put it in the pushka. You gave it to charity. You found a wad of cash, and you said, "I'm going to give it to charity instead. I'll be a good person." But now you realize you weren't such a good person. You were supposed to get it back to the person who owned the money. Ha'imchal al metzia zu din hektish. So does this cash or item that you've donated to charity, does it become charity, or can the person who owns it, later claim, "Hey, it's mine"? So the answer is, as you might surmise, Misha Matza Aveda v'Hikdisha Litzdaka v'Hayitzarach lahachriz al metzia zu ein hekdesho hektish. That person's declaration of hektish is invalid. And therefore, if a person were to discover that this item was donated to charity, instead of, let's say a person finds a car or finds an appliance and decides to donate it to charity because he found it, or an article of clothing. He's going through he lost his coat, and then he goes through the shul's lost and found. No, not the lost and found. The shul does a garage sale to sell off the items that were never claimed, um, because somebody. No, that's not a good example. Yeah, a person donated a coat to charity, and the charity, he goes to the thrift store and he discovers his coat is there. He's allowed to say to the people, "This is my coat. What are you doing with it? It's got my name in it." Okay. All right. So now we go to the next section of the Sefer, which is Sheilot Utshuvot V'chikrei Dinim. We'll see how relevant these are, but these are, I guess, these are more specific cases. She'ela, Mi shekana schora me'iza chanut, uvetoch otam hadvarim shekana matza kesef o davar acher she'ein bo simen. Okay, a person goes to a store and he buys merchandise from the store. And within the items that he purchased, he finds cash or others or something else that doesn't have a siman, that got accidentally placed within his bag. Ha'im hakon zocha ba'otam hadvarim shematza o yesh lo lahachzirim labal hachanut. Does he get to keep them, or do they belong to the store owner? Do you have to give them back to the store owner? In other words, whose lost item is this? How did a wad of cash get into my bag of goods? Is this from the store? Is it from someone else, somewhere else? How did this happen? So let's take a look at the tshuva. Misha kana chafetzimo kelim me'iza chanut mesuyemet. A person buys items, appliances, whatever it is, from a specific store. Umatza betocham kesef udavar acher she'ein bo simen. And he finds within his items cash or any other item that doesn't have a siman at all. Im derech hamocher limkor rak lakona zeh. So if this seller only sells to this buyer, in other words, this is not a regular store, it's just a guy that I buy from, then I have to give back the money to the guy who sold it to me. Say, obviously, there's some mistake here. You sold me something and something else came in my bag and it's not mine. I assume it's yours because I'm your only buyer. However, but if the seller sells these items to multiple customers, Okay, hare ota mitzia zacha bahamotze. So then this is considered to be a lost item that you get to keep. It's something that has no siman. You don't know that it came from the store owner. It may have come from somewhere else, and therefore you get to keep it. V'chenim hamocher kanas charazu mikama anashim. Another example would be like, let's say a guy runs a thrift store of used clothing, and you go into the pocket and you discover that there's money in it. So you don't have to return it to the store. You can keep it because that's considered to be a lost item that's unclaimed, that has no siman. The owner had the ayush, and you get to keep it. V'chenim hamocher kana scharazu mikama anashim ve'enu yodea mimi kana scharazu. So similarly, if a seller sells items that he acquires from multiple sources, and he wouldn't know from whom he purchased this particular item, v'nimtzu bo ma'os elu, and you find money in that item, article of clothing or appliance or whatever it is. Even if I'm his only buyer, I can still keep it because the seller doesn't even know where he got it from. And the only exception would be is if there's a siman. Let's say if the item has a diamond ring or an expensive watch in the pocket and it has a siman, so then whoever finds it, whether it's the seller or the buyer, then they would have to try and get it back to its owner. Okay, does it make sense? Everything logical based on what we've learned so far? So this, I guess, could happen if you go to a secondhand store, a thrift store, where you're buying secondhand goods. Could it ever happen? I don't think it could happen in other circumstances. That's right. That's right.
So they would, according to this, he'd have to return it.
Would he have to return it? So if he knew that it only came from one seller and it was to one buyer, then yeah, if it's a private sale, it sounds like from this halacha that you have an obligation to return it, assuming that it's a Jew. If it's a non-Jew, you could make the argument that I'm pater unless I can make a Kiddush Hashem. And that's exactly what this guy did. He made a tremendous Kiddush Hashem. So then what he did was the right thing. In other words, the whole world congratulated this guy on being so honest. He was just doing what the halacha would tell him. This is the right thing as a yid that you're supposed to do. Okay? But that's
a case where someone bought a house, and when they renovated the house, this is in the law books, because the cousin of mine who was the person, and in the basement, they found in the walls $40,000.
Yeah.
And he ended up civilly getting to keep the money because they don't know. I don't know. It was gone. It was there for like 35 or 40. It was there for a long.
Could be you don't know who the original person was.
There was a few, 3 or 4 owners.
Right.
Right. So there's a circumstance with it. I don't know.
Right. There, I think the Gemara talks specifically about a case like that, where money was left in the walls of a place, and then it was, I think the Gemara calls that it was avud mikol adam. It was lost from all people, because if the circumstances indicate that it's an ancient relic that was left there for, let's say, over a half century or something like that. So then you know for sure that the owner had Yeush. It was lost from the entire world because no one knew about it. And as a result, it's like something that sinks to the bottom of the ocean, and therefore you're allowed to keep it. Yeah, but there are cases like that, yeah. Okay, next. Now, what if the items came from one of the workers? What if one of the employees may have dropped this? Okay. He says, so he quotes something in the footnote. He says, Im lakach peros mi, this is a quote from the Shulchan Aruch. Im lokach peros mi bal habayis shadash haperos ba'atzmo, o al yedei avada v'shivchosav hakananim chayev lahachzir. If, let's say, you know that a person he's selling you, let's say, grain, and you open up the bag of grain and you discover some cash. So if you know that the farmer that you bought the grain from threshes on his own or through his servants, then you have to return it. But if you use workers, it could be that it fell from one of the workers, and there's no siman. Then the workers would have yeush, because they know that it's not something that a person would be likely to return. But if it has a siman, so then you would have an obligation to return it. Okay, let's go on to the next case. Picking up a lost item on behalf of a friend. She'ela mahadin mishara mitzia v'nitkaven lizkot ba l'tzarach chaveru b'kinyan hagba b'kinyan chatzer v'asa hagba. So a person finds a lost item and he says, I know my friend, this is exactly what he needs. I don't need such an item, but I'll pick it up for my friend Yankel. Okay. Ha'im yachol lachzer bo kishametzia dain biyado. Can I change my mind now that it's in my hands and say, instead of giving it to Yankel, I know my brother-in-law needs the same item, so maybe I should give it to him instead. Oh, or maybe can I keep it for myself? Or maybe no, once I've picked it up on behalf of someone else. In other words, this is just a general question. If I pick something up that's hefker, or I purchase something and I purchase it having in mind that I'm purchasing it for my friend, can I then change my mind afterwards? So
the friend give money or
no. I'm going to give it to him as a gift. I'm going to give it to him, or maybe I'll sell it to him, whatever. But I picked it up with him in mind that this is his. Okay. So the tshuva is hamakbia metzia lechavero, afal pishalo amar lo klum zachaba. So the halacha is based on the Gemara that when you pick something up on behalf of someone else, even if you never informed the person, he's totally oblivious to this information, it automatically becomes his. So anytime you say to yourself, or you say, whether you say it out loud or not is irrelevant, if you lifted it up in order to acquire it on behalf of your friend immediately acquires it. And therefore you can't change your mind afterwards, even though you're still holding it. Okay, there's a lot to discuss here, but I'm going to skip all of this.
Is that based on the Dover emes bilvava, that kind of thing?
Dover emes bilvavo is an ethical imperative to always be truthful. But here it's more than that. There's a halachic transaction that has taken place. Once I picked it up for Izzy, let's say, it automatically becomes Izzy's. It's not mine anymore. It never was mine. If I pick up something from Hefker for Izzy, then it was never mine. It becomes Izzy's automatically, and therefore I have no right to change my mind afterwards.
So it's a legal matter, not an ethical.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's irrespective of whether it's the ask you to do it more, or you're at the moment, you're just thinking, I'm gonna give this as.
Yeah.
Right, as you think
Yeah.
that.
I'm picking it up.
You have committed that that is what has to happen.
Yeah. I've committed myself. I'm picking it up for Izzy.
Izzy has got no idea.
Izzy has no idea.
I wouldn't give it.
I'm having second thoughts, Izzy.
I guess it's with the lottery ticket.
Yeah, like when Marv bought me a lottery ticket. Thanks, Marv. And he, halachically, once you bought it,
$1 million, I don't know.
like in other words, it's not just over emes bilvavo. Like if you sincerely said this ticket is for my rabbi, and you wrote my name on it to that extent, then even if it would have been the 70 million, halachically, it was my ticket.
No one ever.
I would have split it with you for sure.
It says that now.
All right. Next. Mitzia b'chatzar hashutfin. Okay, next shaila. Mitzia hanimtzeis b'chatzar hashutfin. I find a lost item in a courtyard that is owned by more than one party. V'rak echad mehem yada mimitzia zu hanimtzeis b'chatzera. So let's say it's, to make it simple, it's owned, a courtyard is owned by Reuven and Shimon. Levi finds the lost item. Now, normally we say that a person's courtyard can acquire lost item, can acquire hefker. So a guy comes along, this item is resting in this courtyard. He picks it up, finds it, and only one of the people know, only Reuven knows that this item was found in his courtyard. Shimon is out of town. Shimon's out of town. Can Levi keep the item for himself when he takes hold of the lost item? No, maybe he's not allowed to, because maybe their chutzner was kona the lost item. So the tshuva is mitzia hanimtzeis b'chatzar hashutfim im echad mehashutfim malta mitzia v'hasheni lo yada mimenu. So actually, I misphrased the question. There's a courtyard, there's a lost item. Reuven, who's one of the owners of the courtyard, sees the lost item and says, let the courtyard acquire the item. So can Reuven keep it for himself, or must he split it with Shimon? So the answer,
Courtyard's a shared courtyard.
it's a shared courtyard. So imechad mehashuf in matzah mitzia v'ashenu lo yada mimena o sheyada v'kadam v'tavas ein yachol harishon lakachas hamitzia la'atzmo ela zachu b'shnehem. The halacha is that both partners acquire the item. It's not just that Reuven acquires the item. Reuven and Shimon acquire the item. So even if Reuven takes it into his house, he has to split it with his partner. So what is this based on? So the Shulchan Aruch paskins Reuven hador im Shimon bevesa u'malalo schar. The case is Reuven and Shimon live in the same house. Reuven is a tenant. Okay. Im tzvi shavur o gozlo shelo parchu nichnus l'toch habayis. So there's a shared area in the house that they both are entitled to. Shimon is the owner, Reuven is the tenant. If, let's say, a deer with a broken leg wanders into the house, or chicks wander into the house, both of them, zachu b'hem shnehem, both of them are entitled to these lost animals. In other words, both of them they have to split whatever asset wanders onto their property. So this is from a Tshuvas Harash, and this is the Rush goes through the details of this tshuva, and then he brings a number of different items that go back and forth on this issue.
Oh, for Tirchas also, the broken leg deer, and it costs money to get rid of it, or like that, they share also the expenses too?
Supposedly, but you would assume that it's worth it for them to do so. They do have an option of just tossing the deer outside and let it die. But they either, because they have rachmanis. Let's say Reuven says, I have rachmanis on this deer, I want to take care of it. And Shimon says, I don't want to pay for this deer. If you want, take it into your room and you take care of it. So then he's relinquished his rights to the deer. He has a right to do that.
But they have an obligation to find the owner to find the lost animal.
No. There's an assumption that this animal came from the wild. It's a deer. It wandered into their property. Okay. Okay. Next, Hamotze Dino Kishomer Sachar. when you find a lost item, your level of liability is only a shomer sachar, or actually is a higher liability of a shomer sachar, not just a shomer chinam. And remember, we talked about this before. Why is that? Because you do benefit in some way from watching over this lost item, that it exempts you from other mitzvahs that may be a burden for you. So you do benefit. In other words, you can exempt yourself from giving money to a shliach who comes to your door, a meshulach who comes to your door, so that for that reason alone, you're a shomer sachar, and therefore, if you are negligent or the item is stolen from your house, you have an obligation to replace it. So he says, Kol zman shahaveda biyad hamotze ledas maran shulchan aruch, dino kishomer sachar shemischayv begneva va'aveda upater me'onse. So the Shulchan Aruch paskins that you have the din of a shomer sachar, and you're liable for all loss and theft. The only thing you'd be exempt from is a complete accident. Armed robbers, let's say, come into the house, or the house burns down, something like that. V'ilu l'das harama hamotze aveda dino kishomer chinam upater migneva v'aveda v'chayiv b'pshia. The Ramah, however, disagrees and downgrades your liability to only a shomer chinam, and therefore you would be exempt from loss or theft. Ula min bal ha'aveda tafas min achasav shel hamotze ein motziin miyada. However, even according to the Ramah, if, let's say, the person who lost the item and then it was destroyed or it was stolen from my house, if he grabs an asset of mine, the finder would not be able to sue him in Beis Din. Because it's a machlokas, whether my status was as a shomer chinam or a shomer sachar, then you'd have to, the person who lost the item would have the burden of proof trying to extract money from me if it gets stolen from my house. But if he grabs something of mine without permission, I can't get it back from him. That's generally the halacha when there's a machlokas. Let's go on to the next halacha. Din nafal al hametzia v'nat lachavera. The next siman deals with when a person falls on top of a lost item or any hefker item to acquire it, but at the same time that he falls on it, his friend grabs hold of it. So this is a classic case of the Gemara, right? In other words, who is entitled to it? The person who was there first and jumped on it, or the person who made an actual kinyan. He made a kinyan. Falling on something doesn't mean that you've acquired it. So that's really the issue that the Gemara deals with. So Misha Hayab Mahalech B'tzidei Rishus Arabim O B'sada She'en Labalim. So the case is a person's walking on the side of the road, or he's working in a no man's field. Okay, so when you see the lost item, you see, let's say, oh, it's a treasure chest, whatever it is, you jump on it so that the people that you're traveling with will not be able to take it for themselves. And some other guy comes, sticks his hand under your body, and grabs hold of the lost item. Okay, ha'im motzian osa miyado, okevin shosa adam nafal ala metzia gila daito shena rotza, sha'ar ba'amos yiknu lo ela b'nefila v'lochein zeh shehechzik b'metzia zachaba. So here's the issue. Normally, Chazal say that anything that's within your Dalet Amos, you acquire, you become the owner of automatically. But by falling on top of the item, you've revealed that you're trying to acquire it specifically by falling on it. That's a malformed kinyan. You can't acquire something by falling on top of it or jumping on top of it. Huh?
Stepping on $100 bill in the street and then somebody.
Stepping on $100 bill in the street, and another guy bends over because you can't be bothered to bend down, so you step on it. Another guy can be bothered. He grabs it. So the point is that you haven't done a legitimate form of kinyan, even though had you not stepped on it, we would say Chazal made a takana that's anything within your 4 amos, we automatically award to you. But the fact that you jumped on it or stepped on it demonstrates that you don't want your 4 amos to be kona. So
obviously makes it like actually putting your hand, raising it up. What is the point of
so the method of kinyan is either hagba'ah, lifting something up, or meshicha, or pulling it towards you if it's a larger item. So let's see, in this kind of situation, what's going on? Did the person pull it towards him? Did the person lift it up? What do we say to the person who jumped on it or fell on it? What do we say to them? So the tshuva is Misha nafal al mitzia im ba acher vehechzik ba. So if a guy falls on top of a lost item, and then another guy comes after him and actually grabs hold of the item, yesh omrim kevin shenafal aleha gila daito sheina rotza she arba amos yiknu lo ela hanafila v'lachein zeh shehechzik ba zachaba. Some say that the second guy is the legitimate owner since he actually took hold of it. The kevin she'en ze ela takanas chachamim, and the answer is the explanation is the fact that normally Chazal award any hefker item that is within my arba amos awarded to me, but the fact is yachol omar eni meunyan b'takanas chachamim shel kinyan arba amos ela b'nefila al hamitzia. The fact that the person demonstrated that he doesn't want the rabbi's accommodation of acquiring something within his Dalet Amos, and that's the reason why he jumped on it. He felt that his jumping on it would be the way to acquire it, but that's not a correct form of kinyan. So therefore, the second guy who grabs it is the legitimate owner.
It's a heavy object, and the guy's an older guy, and he just can't lift it up, but he's sitting on it, waiting for the tow truck, whatever, the guy just physically can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's tough luck.
Yeah. Or he could say, "This is mine, and I want my Dalet Amos to be Kona."
Yes, say it. Yes.
Or he should. It's mine. That's all he has to say. Ulam yesh omrim dim nafal al mitzia b'makom sharba amos konos lo gara mishum shenafal aleh. There are other people who disagree. When you fall on something, you still are entitled to have your Dalet Amos be Kona on your behalf. And therefore, if a guy comes after you and tries to grab it, we don't allow him to keep it. That's the opinion of the Ramah, the Rif, and the Rush. Even though you can't force a person to be Kona, that's only when he doesn't want to be Kona something. Aval kisharotza liknos, elashena rotza liknos bekinin aroi kona bal korcho ve'enan afilo magras kinyano v'chein pasuk hashach kedeyazu. Right, but if a person wants to be kona, but he's using a malformed or an incorrect method of kinyan, we still allow him to be kona, but using the accommodation of our sages that it's within my arba amos, and therefore that's how I'm automatically kona. Our sages instituted this law to avoid machlokes, because they knew that it was very common back in the ancient world where you'd encounter something that was lost, you'd be with other people, and you start getting into fights. So they said, no, who's ever within the arba amos of it first is the owner of the item. That's the reason why they made this takana in the first place. The only shaila is that my falling on top of it, jumping on top of it, demonstrates that I don't want that accommodation. So that's why there's this machlokes. But in the final analysis, the Ramah and the Rosh and the Rif and the Shach all paskin that even though you did something with your actions that might be construed as not wanting to use the rabbinic accommodation, the fact is you showed that you want the item, and that's sufficient for you to acquire it. Okay, so
Just go stand next to it, that's good enough.
if you stand next to it, that's good enough.
So for somebody to be able to put their hand over at the same time as you jump on it, both of you have to be within that $4 balance of the item.
Right. So now there might be cases where there's a question who got there first, right? And it could be that sometimes in that kind of situation, then you have shnai mochsin betalis. Two people walk into Beis Din holding onto a talis. And in that case, you have to split it, right? That's usually the
Person
Hello.
said it's mine. Then that would be enough of a comment to say that it's theirs.
yeah. If he got there first,
If you know
yeah,
that it's mine and lay on it.
it's mine.
Yeah.
Mine, all mine.
But if a value that, there's no witnesses, then, and then they both decide to go to the inn, then they went to a splitting situation.
But it would be Geneva on the person if he got there second. The first person legitimately acquired it according to the halacha. A second guy wants to take him to Beis Din, he'll either lose the case or he'll lie, in which case he's a ganav.
Unless it was very close in time where it's like, running into whatever, a race or whatever, something, you're both getting around the same time, he
Right.
got there, you got
Right.
there, nobody witnessed it.
Right.
You need a video.
We'll continue, Amir Hashem. We'll continue this discussion tomorrow.